Dane Rose, and in this exploration, what is love, I want to use a tool of convergence. Very strangely, in a culture that pays lip service to the word, many of us do not have the experience in an entire lifetime of feeling deeply, completely, and fully loved. Feeling deeply, completely, and fully loved, though we may use the word a great deal or not at all. I want to bring a little bit of context if we step back to how to evaluate an exploration of this kind. And what we see here is a diagram of diamonds within diamonds. It's a metaphor. It's a structure of reality. But one of the things that we deal with in communicating truth of a certain kind is the zoom in. If I describe every bit of this picture equally, you get a little bit of reality. If I zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, pretty soon all you've got is a little bit of brown. That's all reality is when that's your conscious lens and you're zoomed in really close. So one of the things that leads to the unique experience that human beings have of this is real, no, this is real, is the zoom in. If one person is zooming into the nail and the other person is zooming into the hand, and this is real and this is real and this is real, it looks like there's all these different realities. So one of the versions that leads to perspective is distance. Perspective, distance. When you zoom in tight, it becomes very important to know what you are zooming in on to understand why your reality might be completely different than another realities. But the most important thing of all is to move beyond the paradigm of either or that says if I see a nail, then you can't see a finger. If I see a hand, you can't see a nail. This is idiocy. But it is a coping mechanism of a traumatized paradigm, a traumatized Western mind that is terrified of the unknown, as every trauma survivor is, because the unknown represents the repetition of the trauma. When you become afraid of the unknown, and you have a brain with limited processing capacity, try and remember a 20-digit number. 6, 12, 8, 10, 1, 8, 5, 4, 10, 19, 263, 7,400. Try and remember that number. It's not very high bandwidth. And you realize, I don't have the tool to think and hold big things in my brain at one time. And I'm scared of the unknown. Big things are unknown. They're outside my reference point. So rather than saying it's all true, meaning, okay, there's a finger, there's a nail. I'm full of shit. I have lots of truth. I'm a sociopath. I'm a lover. I'm filled with grief. I'm a successful businessman. Rather than holding the complexity of a very big image of all that is, we feel much comfortable in the simplicity of a simple, short label. And we feel very happy in our game of reducing complex things down to a little label. You are a liar, and that's all you will ever be, and that's all you are. You see, what I've just done there is I don't have to think anymore. I don't have to look at the fact that you tell the truth some of the time. I don't have to look at the fact that I do not know the full truth when I think I'm telling the truth. I don't have to look at any of this stuff. And so distance is the more perspective you have, the more likely, you see, when you zoom into the color black, it kind of feels a little bit overwhelming, a little bit boring. You see, but when you show it in contrast, it brings the glistening pink a little bit more into focus, and vice versa. And so it's things that seem very uncomfortable in close-up range can start to feel more spacious with a little perspective. So perspective distance is one of the things to evaluate when looking at a lens of truth, at a voice. How close is it zoomed in? The other is, of course, can you move beyond the duality of if I'm right, you're wrong, and if I'm wrong, you're right. And so let's figure out who has the alpha power in this position, because the alpha person gets to write history, and it always writes history by saying, I'm right and you're wrong. Surprise, surprise. The level of cultural distortion is another of the variables. So perspective, duality, or the embrace of non-duality in the paradigm. Cultural distortion is kind of like a fog. So you can have a 360-degree vision where you have access to all of your emotional states, all of your possible imagination, all of your possible thoughts, all of your different choices to behave, and you have this wonderful sense of presence, and I can be like this or I can be like this, and this tells me this. My hatred tells me where I'm terrified. If I heal my terror, the hatred evaporates. The hatred tells me where I'm in hurt. I'm terrified and hurt and angry and stuck. Where can I find that? You've brought me right there. Thank you, hatred, for identifying a constellation of energy that is measured by the instrument scientifically in the heart, an instrument that the science of our culture does not choose to examine. Very unscientific. Emotional state created by cultural distortion. The level of cultural distortion has a lot to do with emotional state. And then finally, dimension. If we just stay in our heads, things can seem very comfortable and blasé, but suddenly we bring our body into a rock of hot rage and energy and pain and ripping apart, the lack of integrity, the lies in words translated into the language of the body, where we are half of ourselves in public and another half in private, and the sword cuts down the middle, and we feel the visceral pain of being disintegrated. The level of dimensionality determines our sense of reality as well. So this is kind of the way I track myself in this domains, and I share it as a meta conversation to have a sense of where's the focus, what's the perspective, what's the level of emotional distortion, and what's the dimension. And because these change, we are dynamic human beings, the truth, my truth, changes as I navigate this flowing landscape. The Dane that was here to talk about this subject in the morning when I had some things to do is a different lens than the Dane that is talking about this here and now. Different intensities, different focuses, different levels of perspective. Because my center point of awareness is in a different location. So one can track in that sense the location of a consciousness within this constellation. If you are free to venture into the full spectrum of reality and the full spectrum of perception and in the full spectrum of yourself. What I want to suggest is that Love is a number of things, and can be a number of things, and is stronger when they converge in the same point. It's a little bit like decision making. You ever had that situation where you have a decision? Well, what this means is that you are divided. If you are not divided, it's not a decision, it's a choice. A decision is I could do this or I could do this. And I have not made up my mind. Meaning I, the witness, has not decided which one of me to follow the path that divides. I'm at a fork in the road. And there's a pathway to the right, and there's a pathway to the left. And one part of me wants to go here for these reasons, and another part wants to go here for these reasons. And in the zoomed-in narrow beam focus that generates time, the ego state of consciousness, I cannot be in both places. So which place will I go and why? Determines not only the principles I live and will live by, but the destination within the psyche that I arrive in. The first area I want to talk about love is the distinction of integration and disintegration. Think of a jet of water. If you've ever had a hose nozzle, you turn on the pressure and then you turn the nozzle and this fine mist comes out in all directions. It's not too strong at all. It's a refreshing on a hot day. As you slowly turn it open, it becomes stronger and stronger. More water comes out and the beam narrows. It becomes a jet. Now, if you want to clean a car, if you want to clean dirty concrete, you need that jet. You may need to intensify it even further with a pressure washer to push that jet into a smaller and smaller area, to focus it, to channel your strength, your energy in an integrated state towards something important that may be necessary to cut through the soot of the cultural wall that partitions this part of self from this part of self, this part of humanity from this part of humanity, this part of the body from this part of the body, and creates dis-ease in the cancerous illusion of separation. It may need a jet. Now, an integrated self is potent. Think of a tug of war. When you have a disintegrated self, you have 200 personas on this side of the issue and 200 personas on this side of the issue, and they are pulling, generating force. 5, 6, 7, 8,000 pounds of force, threatening to break the tow rope in this tug of war. But you have very little movement. This force is pitted against itself. Of course, both parts of the self say it is self-sabotage. If it wasn't for that part of me, I would be moving here. The other one saying, no, if it wasn't for this part of you, I would be safe and moving here. Some consciousness, some people polarize energy into a state of division, polarizing a country. What we see Trump doing in the United States right now, polarizing a country. Now, this polarizing is present in this video right now as we look at the tension between the unhealthy psyche that needs to restore balance and circle, and the unhealthy culture that is squashing it into an asymmetrical box and blaming you for the failure that always results when you try to ride a bicycle with watermelon wheels. It doesn't flow, it doesn't move. So we have polarization. But when you love a human being, you look for the essence, the core, the feminine presence of that unique individual. The core is always the mother. There is not a single man that exists that was not born from the mother's womb. You look to the feminine, the goddess who created God for companionship. Because it's boring, because it's lonely to do everything by yourself. A division that creates partnership or the possibility of partnership. Now, to love someone is to help them integrate at their best. Now, this is an important distinction, and it gets into a level of subjectivity and complexity because in a chauvinistic culture, you have parents who will talk about their sensitive young daughters and try and advocate for them being what the current word is, a badass. My daughter is a badass. No man tells her what to do. She's going to run her own company. She runs 20-mile marathons. My daughter is a badass. Well, this sensitive child has to be apparently a highly machismo, masculine presence to get any recognition in a chauvinistic culture for her value. She, of course, has access to her masculine traits like any man or woman in human history has, but is her parent talking about the subtlety of her dance? Is her parent talking about the beauty of her voice? Is her parent talking about the grace of her movement with equal honor? Or is that one of those shameful, culturally unpopular, feminine trait of the weak, of the woo-woo unimportant, of the alternative? How chauvinistic can you get in a fucked up culture to take half of who we are as human beings and call it the alternative? The alternative medicine? The one that actually works? That deals with the heart as well as the chemical relationships in the body? Is that really the alternative? Or are we just so fucked up that anything outside our cultural box is different than this version of being fucked up? But there is a sense, even within chauvinism, where it is the leader that is more important than the follower, it is the speaker that is more important than the listener, it is the teacher that is more important than the student, it is the government that is more important than its people. Even in chauvinism, there are good speakers. There are leaders that serve versus leaders that take for themselves at the expense of the people they are empowered to serve. Just so you know, the equation with every leader in history is the leader has zero power that people do not give them. All money, all military force, all loyalty, all service, all access to information, all access to technology is bestowed on an individual at some point. And it is bestowed based on the intelligence of the culture. An intelligent culture bestows power and masculine authority on individuals who will put the group and the circle ahead of themselves. That's what brings the most well-being. Intelligent cultures want to create well-being for themselves and their citizens. So an intelligent structure measures, we could bestow power and money this way, we could bestow power and money this way, we could do it this way and this way and this way, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the people who care the most about the most people and that have the competency to deal with that, and we are going to bless them with the potency of bringing some of our many different resources and concentrating them so that they can be used for the good of the people. This is the contract. There is not a single democracy in history where the leader says, I want some of your money in the form of taxes, and I want some of your time in the form of law and legal regulation, and I want your respect, and I want your honor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all that power, and I'm going to start an offshore bank account, and I'm going to travel around the world at your expense, having fancy dinners and talking about me. I'm going to make family connections that make sure that all of the people in my family get rigged and bribed jobs at an exorbitant rate. And I'm going to tell you a pack of lies so that you feel good about the things that I'm not doing on your behalf. And then I will be done with that, and I will be in a better place, and you will be in a worse place. Who's up for that? Now, since nobody votes for that, leaders of this ilk must lie. And they must lie in such a way as to convince the majority of people that they really do care about them, while they have their secret bank accounts and their secret side deals, and they break their own agreements and break their own laws and don't pay the government's tax bills and all this underhanded stuff. And then that all has to be kept secret. And then we use the presidential or the legal authority of a nonprofit organization or whatever it is to make sure that none of this comes to light. Because if it comes to light, nobody's going to vote for that kind of leadership, because it's not in the public interest, it's in the leader's interest, who is not leading, they're just stealing the power of others for their own purposes. Now, the integration of love in this paradigm, I'll go through briefly. The first thing you want to integrate is heart, mind, and body. A healthy environment, a loving environment, rewards you for doing what you say you will do, for saying what you feel, for thinking and acting on what you feel and say in a way that has integrity. Now, ultimately, because the individual is part of a larger ecology, this must include other people. It may start with a limited ego, when you're in survival. And this is why a healthy culture, a loving culture, helps each individual feel like they can survive and are secure in that surviving before bringing them to their needs for love and belonging, and before meeting those needs for love and belonging. So this is a way when a culture is supporting you to climb what is another definition of love, Maslow's hierarchy of needs: survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. Self-actualization is when the investment in the individual by the ecology of the group pays off. We will support you to survive. We will support you to feel secure. We will support you to feel loved and belonging. And we will support you in the dignity of being the person you want to be at your best. And as every healthy human being reaches that point in their personal evolution, the last step in every human's need is to reach for that spiritual part, that self-transcendence, that self-actualization of giving back what has been given to them. These are the older years of service in a healthy culture. Now, love helps a person integrate. Now, the opposite of that is going to your daughter and saying, I'm going to have an affair, or you caught me in an affair, but don't tell your mother. Don't tell your father that I'm stealing money and putting it in this bank account and this and that. Don't tell. Now, you've immediately divided the child to reflect the divide that is in the family. The deceit, the secrecy, etc. Now the child cannot win either way. Their heart wants to tell the truth, but they don't want to upset daddy, but they don't want to hurt mom's feelings. There's nowhere for them to turn. It creates trauma. This devolves a human being. You create a safe space when everything is welcome, when there are no taboos. When if someone is in innocence and curiosity and says, well, why is the priest always taking that little boy round the back of the building? And they are not shushed up. But that's a good question. Let's go find out. And why are you raping a 6-year-old little boy when the Bible says this and this and this? Well, that's a good question. Let's find out. And why is the Vatican covering it up? Mea Culpa Maxima, an interesting documentary. That's a good question. Let's see what's going on. A healthy environment invites this level of curiosity and makes it safe for the heart, the mind, and the body to be in integrity with one another. Work, family, and humanity. A healthy job. Giving someone a job that loves them is a job that they're proud to tell their children about. Not, you don't want to talk to me about my job. I do shitty things for shitty people and I get paid, and all I can say is I get a good paycheck for keeping my silence. This is, of course, not integrating a human being. You want to look for the split to find the ego and to find evil. Evil is when things divide. And so the split occurs when the following illusion is created. It is enabled by the partition of ego consciousness and the rational reduction scientific mind that says you're only your body. You are only your body. Your body is the only thing that matters. You need to focus about you and your survival. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to do this illegal activity. I want you to genetically modify these things. You, Monsanto worker, I want you to do this research. I want you to suppress this study. I want you to emphasize this study. This is what we're going for. Now, if you can give us these results, you will have something for yourself. Now, the entire planet may suffer because you have colluded with our deception, but your family can move away from the areas we are polluting or the genetically modified. You don't have to eat that if you know the real truth about some of these things. You need to put yourself at odds with humanity because we're going to reward you for betraying the larger species. Whenever there is a group like this, shh, mom pulls the little boy aside and says, don't tell anyone. You've caught me eating the special treat that I say we never eat except on Sunday, right? Well, don't tell anyone. I'll let you have a bite. Now, if you keep my secret that I'm not an ethical mother, that I don't do what I say, that I just make things up expediently, and if you won't tell anyone, I will give you a little bit of the ice cream too. And this will be our little secret. This is evil. You do the exact same thing with a World Bank dam. Our contractor has paid us $20 million in a Swiss bank account. And all we have to do is pick them for the international monetary loan. You see, and they're going to get an extra $600 million for our complicit, and the entire region will suffer. And the world ecology will suffer. And indigenous people will be murdered, but we'll get our 20 million. The company will get their 600 million. And the rest of the world can look on and say, aren't we a good boy with all our donations, and those poor, wretched people over there, why don't they take care of themselves? Why can't they defend themselves against our complicity? Well, I guess if they don't care enough about themselves to figure out all our frauds and stupidity, and they sign the idiotic debt document that saddles their people with hundreds of millions of dollars of debt so that a few multinationals and a few individuals can be bribed. Well, what idiots. They're too dumb to be worth taking care of, right? So whenever you see the split, that's the evil. Oh, no. Now, don't tell anyone. We in public say that we're committed to love and intimacy and healthy relationships. Don't tell anyone. But behind closed doors, that's not how it always works out. But it's good for business if nobody knows. So this is the beginning of, well, it is the symptom of ego. That's where you find the ego. The ego is this part that says you don't matter over there because we're not connected. I just do whatever I want and you don't matter over there. Wherever you find that voice, you find evil, because evil is acting in a way that destroys trust, ecology, balance, health, vitality, and well-being, so that a very tiny bit of well-being can be concentrated in a few people while hurting an enormous amount of people in the process. $20 million as a bribe is not going to create much happiness for the guilty party who feels bad at the people they've betrayed and must leave their body to not fully feel, who must become an addict to avoid owning what they've done because who they've become is a coward, and part of them knows it, and they've got to keep that part behind closed doors. No, it's not a healthy part. It's a curse for the one who is bribed. It is a curse for the multinational company, who, as people discover that, feel worse and worse about themselves. It is a curse for the global ecology. It is a curse for the indigenous cultures that are lost. It is a curse that is brought about. It is a cancer that is brought about by the ego of divisive thinking. This is good for you, but it's do what's good for you, not what's good for everyone else, because you're the only one that matters is the lie. Past, present, and future is part of the cycle of integration. Do I honor my little boy? Do I honor his innocence in my actions today and where I'm going in the future? Do I honor my future self in my actions today? Am I poisoning my body? Am I being induced by the pain of my environment into more and more addiction at the mortgaged ransom that is offered to my future self? Pay this. I gave you a shitty body. I trashed your mind. Now it's yours. I give my irresponsibility to you, future self. You deal with it, because I didn't want to. Masculine serving feminine. Men and women protecting children. Is there an integration of the life cycle, of the balance of masculine and feminine energy? Is there shared power, a voice for the minority at the table? Or is there an uninvited guest who wants to say something we cannot and will not hear because it threatens the power structure we are too apathetic to evolve to reflect the symmetry of the cycle and circle of consciousness and self? What is going on all these levels? When you help someone to integrate at their best, you are helping them to be a whole person, and you are serving their integration with others who are also helping them to be at their best. You are serving the circle. And we honor those true leaders who take a personal sacrifice to make the circle safer for everyone else. And we dishonor those individuals who ask weak and vulnerable people in need, just go over there and kill these innocent Iraqis. We'll pay you a good rate. You may create PTSD for thousands of people, but you'll be a good provider, and that's what counts. America first. Now, the next, so this is a thread. Is someone integrating in your presence, or are they disintegrating? This is a very important dimension of love, because the more you disintegrate, have this part of the self fight this part of the self, the more you disintegrate, the less you can call it love, because you're making the individual less potent. You're pitting them against themselves. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a very important aspect of love, because it's an objective reality that every human being and every mammal throughout history has had three core needs: to survive, to feel secure in that survival, and to be accepted, to belong, and to be safe in their community. Survival, security, love, and belonging. These are the first three needs, and there are many people on the planet today who do not have these three needs met. There are many wealthy people with millions or billions of dollars who do not feel loved and do not feel that they belong. To love someone is to serve another in such a way that they experience these needs being met. How do you know? This is another thread to follow when you're looking to love someone. What makes you feel completely and totally loved right now? It's not a bad question. What's the answer? Now, of course, a culture that disempowers its people never asks its citizens once in their entire life the most fundamental question: who are you when it comes to the language and expression of love? What are the senses? What are the touches that make you feel loved? What are the tastes, the sounds, the smells, the awarenesses that help you feel loved? Now, this again goes into this blur with culture. Because in a culture that shames the feminine, need is shamed, vulnerability is shamed, emotion is shamed, unknown is shamed. Being helpless is shamed. Being out of control is shamed. Not knowing half of who we are is shamed in a chauvinistic culture. And so when a culture says, what do you need? And you need a lot of feminine things. You need to feel cared about. You need to feel appreciated. You need to feel safe in this area and this area. And it's offered to you, what do you need? Your brain does not say, oh, I need to be loved, I need to feel safe, I need to be able to not know what I'm talking about and not be judged for that. Because this is suicide, cultural suicide, in a chauvinistic culture. So you're asked, okay, if I tell you what I really want and need, I'll be shamed and punished by the entire culture. Lose. Or if I don't tell you what would make me feel loved, I'm never going to get it. Lose. There's no way to win. You have to have a culture that honors people for the courage of owning all of who they are before you take people out of this disintegrated state into an integrated state where, say, I need you so much. I want you to touch me like this. I want you to care about me like this. I want you to hold me like this. I want to smell these kinds of smells. I want to move like this. I want to sing like this. I want to hold in a circle like this. And there is a culture around them that says, yes, we honor you for knowing your doorway into love. And this is your hour. This is your day to be induced into a state of complete and utter love by allowing us the honor of serving you in the doorways that you, in your unique psyche, have opened and can receive the intention, the energy that flows divinely through each one of us and be filled. What makes you? And you got to ask. And you got to follow the answer. And you got to help the person over the roadblocks erected by a delusional chauvinistic culture that has told this person since birth, you better believe this shit or we're going to kill you. That's the first message. Number 2, you're weak if you have emotions. Feminine is not as valuable as masculine. Men don't have feeling. You're just asked to, you're given the riot list of delusional stupidity. And if you don't sign here, well, you're not normal and you're not going to belong. And if you don't belong, you're not going to be secure. And if you're not secure and you don't belong, you can't survive in this fucked up environment. Now, what are you going to choose? To join the rest of us in a pigsty? Or go it alone, a little 2-year-old brat? Sign here and get out of here. You're nothing in this world, and make sure you remember you're nothing. Get out of here now. We're running a pigsty, and we've got more innocent children on the way. So, hierarchy of needs. What makes you feel loved? The sensory experience, the mental experience, the emotional experience. The discipline to create container, and this path can follow you all the way. My partner and I have an alarm go off on some days if we're not getting in sync intuitively. We just set our phones on an alarm. Alarm. It's been 60 minutes. What makes you feel completely loved and supported in this moment? How can I make you feel more loved and supported? Ding, 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 ding. Reminder to do the most important thing in life. Now, you see where it goes. Well, I'd like to be sleeping with you like this. I would like to be talking about this. When I say this, I don't want you to sigh and pretend it's a burden. I want to have someone actually care that I bothered to tell them. That's what would make me feel loved right now. Well, gosh, I've got to go back to my shitty culture to see where I learned that, because, it doesn't sound very loving to me either, but this seems to be what everyone does. What am I going to be? Am I going to be normal, or am I going to be loving? Now, the discipline to create container brings out the best in you. Now, there's this long debate about nature, nurture. Did the chicken create the egg, or the egg create the chicken? The point is, if you don't have both, you don't have any. Meaning, if you kill off the chicken in the cycle, there are no more eggs. The egg will eventually rot, and there is no egg or no chicken. If you kill off the egg, the chicken will eventually die, not produce any more eggs, and there wasn't any egg left over to create a new chicken, so it's the end of it. The point is that container and environment has an enormous impact. Now, you don't believe me, it's a little bit too abstract. Stand there and take a whack in the face and watch what happens to you. That's a change in your environment. It's not in your control. If you didn't happen to see it coming, if someone talking about love shouldn't be doing something like that in your paradigm, in your world, and so it shouldn't have happened, so you didn't anticipate, It takes a stranger to walk up to you with a shotgun and mow everyone down. And there are people in this country doing that at this very minute. The environment determines an enormous amount of your state. And that state has a continuum. You in a torture cell, having been drugged, having been lied to, having been shouted at, having watched your fellow torture survivors go through the same ritual, are in a different emotional state than the exact same you in a monastery. You in a country like Denmark that gives paid maternity leave, that pays teenagers around $1,000 a month for going to a top college, who ensures through this protocol that every single Danish person I interviewed had a good college education, liked their work, did not feel scared. A socialist democracy, this is not created to empower a few individuals to create as much capital as possible. It is created for the social well-being of the entire country, and it is democratically elected, has better park systems, because that's what people like. So if you, exact who you are, move to Denmark tomorrow and are blessed with being able to become a Danish citizen and want to go to a free college and be paid $1,000 a month and want free housing if you need that, and get supported to be trained for the job that you are at your best in. This is a job that you love. This is a job that interests you. This is a job that is needed. And you have government guidance support to pick such a position and be paid to train. I didn't meet a single unemployed Danish person, because when you're paid to be trained in a job in which you are excellent, it is more fun to go to work and do team stuff with your colleagues than it is to lay about and get fat watching TV, than it is to collect unemployment and not contribute who you are. The Danish people understand that if you meet everyone's survival need and everyone's security needs and everyone's belonging and love needs, that the very next step that every citizen will move through is self-esteem leading to self-transcendence, leading to self-actualization, self-realization, which is the point at which the Danish people give back willingly and freely to their country. This is bringing out the best in people. It's not scaring them to death. It's bringing out the best. Now, this is the discipline to create a container that is loving, that brings out the best. Now, you look through all this. Am I integrating this person or dividing? Well, if someone can't talk, you're dividing them. If someone is devolving because you told them to do this, now they can't pay their rent. Now they're going to be on the street. Well, it's not the direction of love. If you never ask a single time, let alone once an hour, what makes you feel completely loved and supported? What can I do that would make you feel more loved and supported? If that just seems like too much work for you, you're a Cancer. You're not part of the ecology of bringing people to a pinnacle. You're part of the disease. Part of that, oh, I want to look good, but behind closed doors, I'm not going to ask. Because I don't want to know, because I might have to work a little bit harder. I might actually have to meet my own need to contribute, to transcend self. And I'm living in a delusion based on the lies of my culture that if I deny helping you over there, that I'm better off because I get to sit and eat potato chips and watch mindless TV, and you're out there helping people who are not as important as me. See, that all that's a lie. This is the break point. This is when human beings become cancerous with the planet, with themselves, and with their larger ecology. When they lack the cultural education to become who they are. And I've been there. I've been there thinking that somehow it was an insult to my own self-value to care about other people more than they cared about me. Because they didn't care about me, and my parents didn't care about me, and my teachers sold me out for their salaries, and this, and I'm not going to care about any of them. Well, I'm standing up for myself. Until I got sick. You see, that when we're trained in an immature culture, we don't understand what we don't understand. And the culture doesn't understand what we don't understand because they don't understand it either. And the tired message goes round and round and round and round on the old 45 records. Just do more of the same old thing. Just be normal, be normal, be normal, be normal. And it never leads anywhere except deeper into the pit. Where can you turn? Well, that's why I'm making this video, to share what I'm learning, to grow together, to reach outside of the pit and see something. It's a little bit more interesting. The discipline, what brings out the best in you? Because what brings out the best in me? Going to bed when I'm ready. Waking up 8-9 hours later, often 10-11 a.m. Doing things of an artistic nature, listening to my dreams, talking with my partner, having inspirations to make this video. This was a dream last night. Having the space to do that. Giving myself the setup. This requires a purchase. It requires magnetic pens. It requires lights, special light bulbs in the ceiling, LED lights with batteries. It requires a charged iPhone. It requires a clicker. These are the things that allow me to do this in a way that does not collapse. It has a discipline of container. Spending $3,300 a month on a house that is empty, except for me and my wife. So that there's container for this to occur. Buying a separate apartment or renting a separate apartment next door to the main apartment to do these things when I'm in Thailand. It requires a container that makes this possible. And there is a discipline in asking and learning. Now, in this culture, we teach people to shut up and conform. So there's a discipline in asking. I have to watch my wife to see how innocent she is today, to see how alive she is today, to see how she treats our dog. When she really loves herself, she is incredibly generous to the dog. When she's angry and hates some part of herself, she takes it out on the dog. The dog can never do anything right that day. I have to watch a variety of cues to see how well I'm doing. Because if I do my job well as a husband and partner, she loves herself and she knows she's loved. Then the dog knows that he's loved. It works its way down the power structure. When a government does its job, sending out census, how are you all feeling today, you in our country? We're going to publish the results on national television. 36% of Americans are feeling lonely. Thank you for that. 2% are fully satisfied with the way government is being run. 80% of you know a friend or a relative that we're paying $100,000 to lock up in prison. Okay, this is the census of American well-being right now. And we actually care enough to ask. We care enough to get the data. We care enough to know how you feel about it. And 86% of you would like us to address emotions in school. How many people feel comfortable being helpless in our country? Well, sociologists say that we need to have access to the full amount of emotions, and it's actually quite unhealthy when we start shaming parts of the psyche. So we're going to have a free public television program on how to become more emotionally literate. That's how we care about you as a government, as opposed to my experience with the police recently. They couldn't help this because they could be sued. And they couldn't help with this because that's not what police do. And they couldn't enforce this contract because that's not what police do. And the immigration authorities couldn't speed up the immigration of my wife because they could give a damn. And they couldn't respond to why or how because they could give a damn. And my own tax money is being spent to keep me separate from the most important person in my well-being, such that I have to fly overseas and shut down my business to accommodate the stupidity of my own nation's laws in its bigoted racism that systematically blocks out people that don't make certain amounts of money. Well, not a lot of love there, is there? Well, that's the kind of country that when you ask 100 Americans, do you feel cared about and loved and safe by your government, you may only find one. In Denmark, 30 for 30 of my interviews feel that their government is doing a good job. Well, it's not random. It's not that the Danish government is harassing its people the way the United States does. I stop on an empty freeway when I'm tired at 2 a.m. 5 minutes later, a policeman comes over. Move along now. I'm very sleepy. No one's on the road. I'm on the curb. Could you get me have a nap? No. We don't care about your health. We don't care about your driving safety. We just look at a little regulation and drive around spending fossil fuels in the air to harass our people. And if you're homeless and even more unfortunate or living out of your car, we, who cannot do all these other things like actually find stolen property, will show up and harass you as well. Well, sociopathic governments lead to sociopathic families and companies, which lead to sociopathic individuals who sometimes get fed up with the whole fucking thing and mow down They're bullies in school, and for a few moments, they feel like someone's standing up for how shitty this feels. And then they're dead. Out of the hellhole. That they actually, oh gosh, I guess we have to look. We have to look at all the bullying here. This isn't in our job description. We didn't sign up for this. People have been bullying themselves for hundreds of years. I'm a trained teacher. I'm not paid for this shit. This isn't my job description. It's not my responsibility. And don't tell me it's the parents' responsibility. It's not my responsibility. It's the school's responsibility. Welcome to America, where everyone feels aggrieved, where very few people feel deeply and fully loved, where very few people feel safe and secure in any of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and where the battle is fought on chauvinistic, masculine turf that ensures that everyone loses. And don't you ask about how this came about, and don't you question our stupidity. We're number one, America first. You don't matter. The feminine is shit. And we love our children, and we're great, and we care about happiness and love so much that we never send out a goddamn census report in the entire system of government, in the entire country, once, to say, how happy are you? What is your biggest source of unhappiness? And then publishing these as national statistics to start working on as a culture and a country in a way that makes sense. Measurable data, scientific goals, accountability, year-by-year statistics about the most basic thing. How many Americans today are secure in their survival? Look at it objectively, with savings, with retirement, with this, that, and the other, and look in debt, and look at it subjectively. How do you feel the feminine side? Do you feel safe, or do you feel like I've often felt like I'm 3 accidents away from being on the street? I could have $100,000 in the bank, all kinds of skills, turning away 50% of my work. I break a leg, one client doesn't pay me, I have a flu that stops me talking at an important moment. 6 months later, I'm on the street, I'm a loser, and my police come along to tow me away. I don't feel secure. Loved and belonging? Where? In what ways? No one even asks. No one asks the question, what makes you feel loved? I've asked 200 people, not a big amount. You know what they've said? That's a good question. I have no idea, because no one has ever asked me. So I don't have an answer ready. And most of them do not say, oh goody, let me sit down and write out a bit of paper and then send Dane an email or call. Okay, now I have an answer. It's shameful not to know things in a chauvinistic culture. And I have shamed them by the cultural standards, by bringing them to a doorway of their own cultural ignorance, which is not their fault. And it doesn't feel comfortable, and it feels a bit feminine and a bit vulnerable. So men and women, they run off where nobody else in America will ask such an audacious question. And the few that do can feel as if they've done something wrong, by breaking out of the cultural prison, by thinking, by looking to integrate the many disintegrated evils and imbalances that are quite normal, and caring enough about the feminine to do something. Oh, let's avoid that. We don't want to be associated with one of those people. So we have sustained unlovability. When no one knows what makes them feel completely loved, when people run away from those trying to be loving, when we shove our version of love, you eat those vegetables, I do this for your own good, you put up with an abandoned father, I'm doing this for your own good, and when we shove love, i.e. pain, misery, and confusing ideas that I don't want down my throat and call it love, we create a pattern of unlovability. How can you love someone when they do not know what would make them feel totally and completely loved? They just know they don't feel it. But if you get closer to them, you're stalking me. Don't get too close, that's not normal. When the norms of the cult preclude honoring vast regions of the psyche, how can you break through? This is the question. This is the equation of unlovability. When someone is technically unable to be loved and afraid of the very energy that could heal that disease, because it's not normal in a sick culture, we find ourselves in this mess. We find ourselves in this mess where I can travel to third world countries and have my well-being go up 300% by the warmth and presence of the feminine that has not been systematically obliterated, from people who have not been trapped into the long lineal triangle of the reductionist Western mind and can still remember how they feel, and they're not yet educated enough to know not to pay attention to their own body and their own feelings, to actually care about other people and share more in community. Well, I'll take a third world country like that any day over we're number one, America first, leading the way with no national maternity leave. Not one. It's amazing. Denmark has it paid for husband and wife as long as necessary. Not a day over here, because we care about our children, because we're doing all this for you, right? We have to unravel the insanity. We have to go down into the shadow, the hatred, the self-hatred, the loathing, the terror, and the trauma. We have to be willing to face the paranoid idiots at the top of our power structures before we can penetrate the wound, lance it, clear away the pus, and begin building in healthy ways. This is just a small matrix in that most important topic. What is love, and how do you love someone in a mature way? Because note what is not on this, and there's large areas that are not covered, which I'll call transcendence and moving beyond ego. Conveniently, we call psychedelics such as psilocybin and LSD, which are gateways into some of those states, along with DMT in a safe and therapeutic environment. We call these Schedule I drugs, drugs without any potential for medical value. And we call them that because we're afraid of them as a culture, not because there's any scientific evidence. The leading statistician hired by the UK government to prove that drugs were bad found an interesting fact, that 300 people get seriously injured or die from horseback riding, for every person who gets injured or dies from LSD or psilocybin or MDMA. Well, that's an interesting statistic for a country that promotes horseback riding and says that you should be locked up in a concrete cell, your family should be ripped apart, your economy should be ripped apart, you should be socially stigmatized and unable to vote and shamed for accessing a transcendent state who does the outrageous thing of stepping beyond the norms of our stupidity, that we're too stupid within those norms to evaluate objectively or scientifically for that transgression. We will destroy your well-being and incite you with such fear that hopefully you will take these substances in an unsafe place from an unregistered dealer and have real danger come of it. And then we will use that to prove that we're right. See, there's danger. See, you see, they bought unregulated drugs on the black market. There was some impurity. You see, that's why we've got to get rid of the drugs. Prohibition didn't work. It just created the mob. The drug war hasn't worked. It's just filled Swiss bank accounts with blood money from the many who try and satisfy the needs of human beings to get outside of the hell of this culture with the addictive drugs, the amphetamines, the cocaines, etc., or that try and explore some doorway out of the hell that we ask every adolescent in this country to be a part of, called high school. This is a framework of love, and if you use this framework, and if you pay attention to impact, and if you find someone who's courageous enough to step outside the door of this culture's prison, you'll be moving in the right direction. And it's the convergence that you're looking for, the impact. Their ego's definition of what makes me feel loved. Oh, if you buy me a mink coat, I'll feel loved, a diamond ring. Okay, that's the ego's definition. What about your dreams? Where are they taking you? You help someone start walking their talk and seeing how that actually feels, as opposed to me discovering at 40 years old that having a lot of money and being able to travel anywhere in the world was frankly quite meaningful, but not the be-all and end-all. It just leaves you more aware of our culture's deficiencies when you've got time on your hands. Time on your hands to actually feel as the wake of the motorboat catches up as you cut the engine and floods into the motorboat. You realize, everything I've been leaving behind me is washing back. The trail I've been leaving behind me is one of pollution. It's time to start questioning. It's time to start breaking down my choices and looking again. How did I end up here and here and here? And it's always the same answer. The little boy was terrified out of his wits, was beaten, was lied to, was bribed into taking this course and this course and this course and this course that led into a dark place, that led into a deeper and deeper dependency, one step at a time into desperation, or being alone with the one who killed so many parts of myself to satisfy you, the abuser, is the most horrific pain of all. So I've got to keep buying into the cultural lies, doing one more abuse to myself after another, because I can't afford to be alone, and you'll abandon me as soon as I take a stand for myself, as soon as I take a stand for the you that you abandon as systematically as you abandon me. You'll be an outcast. As every gang tries to do, they get the gang member to commit an illegal murder. So that if they ever end the gang, they can be pinned with it. And they'll be all alone with the meaninglessness that they didn't get the belonging, the security, the survival they wanted for that murder. They've just got remorse and regret for taking another innocent life. And so a gang member will not trust a new inductee until they commit a murder, a betrayal, as deep as the other gang. Now you're one of us. Now you're one of us. But if you ever leave, we will hunt you down and kill you. With the same ruthlessness that the US government attacks and chased Edward Snowden all the way around the globe, making sure that every American knew. You do what you're told. You don't question us. We don't abide by our own laws. We don't tell you the truth. You shut up and go back to sleep, or we will use the authority you gave to us to hunt you down, to punish you for calling us out. This is evil. This is abuse. It's abuse when a parent does it. It's abuse when a community does it. It's abuse when a government does it. It's abuse when a culture does it. Everyone is poorer when an Edward Snowden is too traumatized and frightened to speak out, and leaves everyone in the dark, as thousands upon thousands of American intelligence workers chose to do, getting high paychecks for pulling the wool over Americans' eyes for our national security, the security of the power structure to fight its citizens should they ever decide to take any of that power back, with dossiers upon dossier, so that they have a 10-year history of your GPS where you were 10 years ago and can haul you into court if you ever become irritating to the latest abuse of power. You can say, where were you in 1999 on Thursday the 4th of, well, I think I was with my mother. Is that your official testimony, sworn to keep the truth? Well, we have a GPS that shows you were nowhere near your mother. Well, I don't remember where that was. So, you admit it. That's what's being gathered on every American today. The bribe ability, the kind of leverage Putin may have on Trump, that will get one power structure to turn on another power structure, and then we'll both fuck over our people. Because none of this is being driven with the primary goal of serving the weakest and most vulnerable people in climbing Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's ego, there's cancer, there's betrayal, there's lies, there's power, there's addiction, there's pornography, there's power and social prestige, there's domination, there's chauvinism. But there's not a lot of love, and a lot of what the power structures of our world are, because they are built out of the ego consciousness that is being sustained by our separation and our presumed separation from the goddess, from ourselves, from our partners, our families, our soul, our own feelings, and our own body. As every little American learns when they don't want to go to school, when they try and reject the bureaucracy and are told, well, you need to. You may never use algebra in a day in your life, but you've got to get those grades because someone else who isn't going to use algebra a day in their life either is going to evaluate those grades, and they'll give you lots of money. Because what school really is in so many cases is proof that you can do what you're told. And if you can get A grades at that, we want you at our corporation. No, we don't need calculus. No, we don't need algebra. No, we don't need your skewed version of history. No, we don't need you to kick a ball around. We need you, in fact, to do what you're told and convince these people to sign this contract that isn't in their interest, and to show that you can be a team player. Now, how do we know that you're that dumb? Because you sat there for 16 years and learned crap in a lousy environment. And you were so motivated to please the teacher that you wrote essays that only she would read, and she didn't want to. She had to stay up late grading them. Oh, gosh. You wasted your time doing what you were told. That is largely irrelevant to the needs of our culture and our world today. And we like that. We'll have you on board. Give you a scholarship, first of all, to prove that you're really dumb. Now go and do this. And let's see you show the same zeal, the same narrow-mindedness, as you don't question, is this really for anyone's good? This is what the shareholders like. And that's the only people you need to think about. You'll have a nice little retirement nest egg as you float away on your yacht and leave the hell behind that follows you in your wake. But you'll have our culture's honor, a little gold medal perhaps, a little Purple Heart for murdering innocent people in Vietnam. You'll have a nice little medal. It's better than nothing. So long, Captain. Enjoy the descent.